This is my channel's weekly compendium, ending Monday, June 19th, 2023. Case file number 1157, written by Anonymous 1378-1378. Kitchen evidence of universal instability. My boyfriend and I got home around 2:30 a.m. after going to a concert. I was sober. He was relatively sober, 3 drinks. We were both hungry, so we decided to boil water for pasta and saute some spinach, a relatively quick meal to make. We had a gas range stovetop in our previous apartment. I put on a pot of water for the pasta and turned on the gas on that jet. The water starts to boil after a bit. I then grab another large pot for the spinach and put quite a bit of oil in the pot to prepare to saute it. I remember looking at the oil in the pan and wondering if I would need more for the spinach. I turn away as my boyfriend did something silly, I don't know what, and as I turn back to the jet to turn it on, he just goes, "Wait, no, stop!" I look at him confused, and he points to the jet. All of the oil seeped through the bottom of the pan, onto the stovetop, which I was about to ignite. It would have turned into a horrendous grease fire, and I would probably have been badly burned. We were really weirded out by this, and put the pan aside, and cleaned the jet. We figured there must have been a hairline crack in the pan that caused it to leak out. So the next morning, I grabbed the pan and put water in it. Surely, if oil seeped through it due to a hairline crack, water would pour out of the bottom of the pan. Here's the thing, nothing happened. Water stayed in the pan. We even put oil in it again to check. Same thing, nothing leaked out of the bottom. We're still not sure what happened that night. Case file number 1158, written by Lawrence Mim. The Keychain Anomaly. 3 years ago, my now ex worked in a small mom-and-pop restaurant with the 2 owners and 2 employees. One day, Donna, one of the owners, opened a package that had 2 small Japanese stress relief keychains that were pea pods, and when you squeezed them, peas with faces would pop out. She gave one to both employees because she just thought they looked kinda neat when she saw them on Amazon. About a year, maybe 14 months after that, he quit working for them. This is important. I had put the toy in its original package covered in Japanese characters all over it and put that on the shelf. He and I divorced about a year and a half ago. 4 months ago, I got my daughter back from about 309 miles away. One of her first days here, she asked me if she could take the pea pod out and put it on a keychain. I said, why not? Here's the glitch. One evening, after looking under the couch for the remote, I wound up losing my lighter between the cushions on the couch. I move over and lift up the cushion to retrieve my lighter, and when I lift up the cushion corner, I see something green. I lift the couch cushions to see what it is, and it is a small pea pod keychain. I go to my daughter in the kitchen and hand it to her, thinking she had got it lost, but no, she goes and gets hers and shows it to me. It had since been moved off her keychain, but is snugly secured to a phone case. We looked at each other in confusion, and when we squeezed it, the exact same worn out and identical peas pop up. We cannot figure out how an identical keychain about 3 years ago could be laying right under the corner of a couch cushion that is frequently lifted up. The one that was a replica lost any chance of ever getting mixed up and winding up here. It was lost over 2 years ago, and then really lost when he left 18 months ago. I have literally zero explanation for this carbon copy of a keychain to be in my apartment, let alone right under the couch cushion. If anyone has any ideas, I'm open to them. Creepy file number 94, written by TidyWhiteys37. A Night of Shadows in the Closet. I lived in an old apartment in 2002. The place was built in 1900, so it was just over 100 years old when I moved in. The living room and kitchen were fine, but the bathroom and bedroom were unnerving. Like I just always felt like I was being watched, especially in the bedroom if the closet door was open. Those unnerving feelings just became moderately uncomfortable as I settled in. I felt safe in the bedroom, but only if the door was locked. One night, I was dead asleep when there was a loud bang on my bedroom door. When I got up the courage to get out of bed, I checked the apartment and all the windows were closed and locked from the inside. The door still had the chain secured. No one was in there. I mentioned the closet in the bedroom. I never liked going in there, and I never liked it if the door was open. For some reason in my head, I would hear gasping noises. So for that reason, the closet stayed closed. A month or more after I was woken to the bang on my door, I was dead asleep. But something woke me up, and it was a pressure on me like being held down. It was pitch black in my room. I couldn't see anything, but I knew someone was standing over me. When I could finally turn on a bedside lamp, no one was there. After that, I couldn't sleep in the dark. I had to sleep with the lamp on. That incident scared the life out of me. And after that, the unnerving feeling of being watched intensified. Friends would come over and comment on being uncomfortable in the bathroom like being watched. It became so uncomfortable for me that when I had the chance to move to another unit, I jumped at it. I packed up and got out. After me, several people rented the apartment, and they would move out within months. I became friendly with the building manager and told him that I felt the place was haunted. He kind of laughed it off. Years later, they were renovating the place. The building manager was doing some painting there, and the building owner was there too. I went and checked out the apartment, and it looked nicer. It didn't feel as creepy. I got to talking with the building owner, and through the course of conversation, he just threw it out that a former tenant had ended their journey in the closet. He also mentioned that the original designer of the building lived in that apartment and died there. I wasn't mad when I heard that, but felt validated that what I experienced was real. Case file number 1159, written by Dearth of Data, The Cryptic Night in Iraq. My story is from my first tour in Iraq. We were stationed not far from Baghdad at the time. Our sector had some very heavy activity a couple months earlier, and as a result, there was a 2200 closing of checkpoints set at most crossroads in the area. No in, no out. This was followed at 2400 by a strict off-street curfew. On this night, we were lucky enough to have a patrol duty instead of manning one of those points. At about 22:30, we pulled up to the side of the road for overwatch duty for a while, when a minivan slowly pulled up. An honest-to-God Astro van-style minivan. Iraq has vans of many makes and types. However, Iraq does not have soccer mom mobiles. Weird but not too weird, still cautious, could be anything. Probably just a local trapped on the wrong side of the CP trying to beg through. However, next comes the driver. I move forward to try and puzzle out what he wants. The driver asks in flawless American English, "Hey, are the roads closed ahead?" I had expected broken English begging me to help him through the very close checkpoint ahead. The best I could stammer was something like, "Yeah," as eloquently as possible. His response, again in a perfect American accent, "Well, dang. Oh well, you have a good night now. Catch you later, buddy." I'm paraphrasing him, but I distinctly remember him calling me buddy as he drove off. I remember because as I wondered about his car and the conversation, I saw his license plate. It was from Florida. To this day, I don't know who that stranger was, but I wonder if he wasn't just some guy who got really lost and refused to ask for directions. Case file number 1160, written by The Best Yak Ever, The Very Strange Taco Night. A few years back, I wanted to do a taco night. I have this big frying pan I use to make homemade tortillas. I get my ingredients and then go into my cupboard for the pan, but it isn't there. I called my wife asking her if she'd moved it. She didn't. Perplexed, I rummaged through my kitchen and nothing. Nothing else in the house is missing. We have a security system, cameras, and a dog who barks anytime someone is at the door, and many times when no one is at the door. Hi, Mr. Ben. No one has been in our house but us. But the pan is just gone. We actually searched the whole house. The situation is so stupidly strange. Taco night was cancelled. About 2 weeks go by. Nothing out of the ordinary occurs. I open up the cupboard to get a saucepan, and there's the freaking frying pan. It's right where it's supposed to be, in a place where the two of us checked on multiple occasions that first night. The pan blinked out of existence, and then 2 weeks go by, or at least something like 2 weeks, and then it blinked right back in. Case file number 1161, written by Stewie Sack, The Sixth Sense. When I was 14, my dad and I were home alone as my mom and brothers went to visit my grandparents. One morning I woke up and got ready to go around to a friend's house. Dad said he wasn't feeling too great and that he was going to have a lie down. Didn't think anything of it and went to my friend's house. On the way there, I had this feeling of dread and fear that I couldn't quite pin down. So I phoned my mom and told her that Dad and I were alright, but he felt ill. Nothing unusual at all. Dad was ill quite a lot with headaches and whatnot. When I actually got to my friend's house, I was there no longer than 5 minutes when the feeling of dread got overwhelming. I felt like the world was closing in on me and that I was about to die. Fear welled up in me and it was impossible to ignore it. I left and walked home, not running, don't know why. The whole way back knowing and not thinking, I knew as if it had already happened that I was going to find something at home that I didn't want to. I've also just realized typing this that I didn't phone my dad as I walked home. I think I wanted to stave off what I was going to discover as long as possible. I got to the corner near my house and froze. A big hedge separates my house from the path and I didn't want to go around because I knew what was on the other side. I could see it in my mind. A few minutes go past and I eventually manage a few steps around the hedge and my heart drops. An ambulance is sitting on my drive. The fear and dread disappeared instantly, and everything just seemed to become calm. I walked past the ambulance, still don't understand why I didn't look in it first, and into the house. The living room is a mess. My dad's computer chair is on its side, and everything on the desk is scattered under the floor. I calmly walk through each room in the house, but no one's in any of them. So back out to the ambulance. I knock on the doors, and the wait seems like an eternity. I didn't want them to open. Once they're opened, it's over. But they do, and there's my dad, alive, sitting up on the bed grinning with the paramedics. I can remember saying, "That's my father," and then getting into the ambulance. I was angry, confused, and relieved all at the same time. For the last half an hour, my mind had convinced me that I was going to find something life-changing at home, but here he was perfectly, at the time, all right. When I left for my friend's house, my dad had gone onto his computer and suddenly thought that he was having a heart attack. He phoned 999 and tried to describe what was happening, but he passed out, and the next thing he remembers is the paramedics scooping him off the floor and taking him into the ambulance. Turns out his aorta was slowly but surely tearing away from his heart, and he was rushed into surgery. They chucked an artificial valve in him, and 10 years later he's fit as a fiddle. I'll never be able to explain what I felt and why I was drawn back home. I don't believe in anything supernatural or spiritual. So, coincidence, I guess? A bloody weird coincidence. Case file number 1162, written by Clicksack McQuack. My granddad saved me from the brink of death. So, I'll share a somewhat positive story. When I was very young, I had violent rear exit stomach issues and vomiting for a couple of days. My mom took me to my grandmother, who was a nurse. She took one look at me and rushed me to the hospital. I was so dehydrated that I couldn't even drink on my own. I came very close to death at one point, but I recovered eventually. A couple of weeks later, my mom and grandmother were talking about my stay at the hospital. My mom said something along the lines of how the doctors brought me back, when I apparently piped up and corrected her. No, it was my granddad. He pulled me out of the hole. My grandfather had passed away a few years earlier. My mother said my grandmother just closed her eyes and smiled. I can't remember any of it since I was so young, but I still think about it every now and again. My grandmother saved my life. I'm glad I was able to somewhat repay her by making her happy that day. She passed away a few years later. I'd like to think she and my grandfather are together and happy. Cheers to my nanny and my granddad. Case file number 1163, written by Aaron Jill 1. When ghostly guests join you in bed. About 3 years ago, I was helping a friend move. It was a historic home that had been empty for years and years, built in the 1850s, I believe. The moving truck was a day late. Surprise! So I ended up sleeping on an air mattress. I conked out early, like 8 p.m., while she went out for drinks. I woke up because the air mattress moved about a bit and had gotten firmer. Like someone or something had sat on the bed. I kicked my foot around thinking it was my friend back from the bars. Nothing. But the mattress gets squishy again. I try to go back to sleep, and about 10 minutes later, it starts happening again. Being awake, I realize it felt like my dog getting ready for bed. Circle, 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 pause. Circle, paw, circle, pause, circle. Okay, lay down. I could feel the individual steps. Obviously, there were no animals in the house. I thought about pulling out my cell phone or getting up, but decided whatever it was seemed benevolent enough, so I went back to sleep. I didn't mention it to my friend at the time. She gets creeped out real easy, and I didn't want to ruin her new home. About a year later, she got a dog, Suzuki, and I'm visiting her for the first time since the move. Woohoo! Upgraded to a real bed and everything. A pair of shoes gets eaten by the under the bed space, so I flop on the floor and stick my hand under the bed to get them. Something licks my hand. Whatever. Suzuki clearly snuck under the bed. Pull up the bed skirt. No Suzuki. But a dozen or more dog toys. Weird. I mentioned to my friend, who gets real quiet. She doesn't know how the toys keep getting into the guest room. She has to keep it closed because Suzuki kept going in there and barking and scratching up the original wooden floor, playing so hard. My conclusion: lonely and friendly dog or cat ghost. I tried to convince her to leave the door open, but she won't. Doesn't let guests sleep in there anymore. Makes me sad thinking the ghost is just lonely. Bonus file written by Dirty Mouth. Whispers of Life from the Beyond. In 2011, my great-grandmother was very, very sick. She had just turned 90 and had been in a loopy state for a few years. She was suffering from internal bleeding, but the tests to figure out where would have likely killed her, so she was hopped up on morphine. It was so sad, truly. Mix that in with dementia. Anyway, my husband and I had stopped by to see her in the hospital to say our final goodbyes. She barely remembered who I was, but her eyes were very loving. We spent a great deal of time with her, just by her side, knowing this was her deathbed. After a long time, I went to lean in and give her a kiss. She whispered in my ear, "You're going to be a great mother. She's going to be so lucky to have you." My husband heard it too. I was taken aback. She couldn't have known that we were struggling with infertility issues or my desire to be a mother. I was a little upset because I'd given up hope of ever being a mom. I chalked it up to her dementia, kissed her head, let a tear fall, told her I loved her, and walked out the door. A few days went by, and I planned on stopping back again, but had work conflicts. The family let me know she was still holding on by a thread, and I wished she would just let go because I hated seeing her in so much pain. That night, I had a dream, a very vivid one. In the dream, I was a small child. My great-granny was there, in a flowing white dress with beautiful white hair. She had me sit on her lap. She kissed my forehead, told me she loved me, and then said, "If you were any bigger, I'd put you in my pocket." Something she'd always said to me. I cried into her chest, told her I didn't want her to go, but she told me she'd always be with me. Then she disappeared. When I woke up, the first thing I did was call my grandmother, my great-granny's daughter. Before she could say anything, I frantically told her about my dream, down to every last detail. She paused, sighed, and said, "Honey, your great-granny passed last night around midnight. Maybe she was stopping by to say goodbye." I was taken aback. I was raised religious, but I'm not religious myself. I remember thinking that I wish I could believe she stopped by to see me on her way to the other side, but that those were just delusional thoughts. I missed her terribly and cried. A few months went by. New Year's of 2012 hit, and I tried to have a beer with my husband, but I got sick. I was very tired, cranky, and sick. Everything I ate came right back up. I was convinced it was the flu until a friend told me I was pregnant. I told her, "You know I can't have kids." But I took a test just to pacify her, and my own curiosity really. Lo and behold, the second line came up immediately. I was pregnant. My husband and I went to the doctor's office a couple weeks later and saw our tiny baby on the ultrasound. We found out our due date was late August, the same day my great-grandmother had passed. I was shocked. What were the chances? Now I'm the proud mama of an almost 2-year-old daughter who has my great-granny's distinct little nose. She looks so much like her, it's amazing. I can't help but wonder if my granny knew something I didn't. She said the word "she" when she spoke of me being a mother. Coincidence? I'll never know. But I like to think she's still with me, despite my lack of religion. Case file number 1164, written by Suffering is Optional. The entire road just vanished. My brother and I were driving through a residential back street, trying to avoid the main road. This was before GPS was common, so we were using our sense of direction, and we ended up running parallel to the main road. I was the passenger. It was a bright sunny day around midday. As soon as we had turned onto this parallel road, we had noticed it was a long straight road, and we had a good few kilometers in front of us before it ended. So we relaxed now as we had a new path home. He looked to his right. Australia driving is on the right-hand side, and I to my left. This couldn't have been more than a few seconds because when he slammed his brakes, and I looked forward to why he was braking, it was because the goddamn street ended and we nearly mounted the curb into the house. And no, he didn't swerve. We were suddenly at a T intersection, and a few seconds before that, we had as far as the eyes could see of road ahead. We booted it the hell out of there. Case file number 1165, written by Chaos Chronicle, The Boy Who Conquered Physics. So, I work at a sandwich shop. Anyway, I was getting ready to close at 10 p.m., and I'm pretty meticulous about closing on time because I'm usually ready to go home by then. It's 9:55 p.m. and the bell rings, letting me know someone came in. I grumble a little bit because I'm tired and head to the front. This little boy, probably 7 or 8, is standing in the front of the counter. He's wearing this old-fashioned tweed jacket and a red baseball cap. I say, "Hello, what can I do for you tonight?" like I usually do. He just stares at me like I grew a second head. I stare back confused. "I have to use the restroom," he says and runs back to where the restrooms are. I hear the door squeal open and slam shut. At this point, I'm a little aggravated because I'm getting ready to close, and I don't want to have to wait on this little dude whose parents couldn't even be bothered to come in with him. So I start to close. I turn off the open sign and head to the back to do some quick dishes, thinking I'll just lock the door behind the little boy when he leaves. I finish the dishes and start to put the food in the refrigerator. I'm starting to get pissed. All I have to do is put the food away, count the bread, and count the drawer. I finished all of this and still no little boy. I put on my coat and get ready to leave, gathering receipts and such. I go to knock on the door of the boys' restroom. "Hey, I'm closing now, you need to leave." Nothing. "Hey, kid, come on." Still nothing. "If you don't at least answer me, I'm going to open the door." The lock was broken, so I knew I would be able to open it. I stood there, worrying that maybe something happened to him. "Kid?" I jiggle the handle open. I kind of covered my eyes because I didn't really want to see a little boy on the toilet. I expected him to scream or at the very least say something. When all there was silence, I looked into the restroom the size of a small closet. There was no one, no sign of anything. The lid was still lifted from when I had cleaned it earlier. No trash in the bin. What? I checked the girls' restroom and the entire lobby. Nothing. Nowhere in that entire shop. And there is absolutely no way that he left. It's impossible that he left because I've worked there long enough that the doorbell is a Pavlovian response, and you can hear it clearly everywhere in the store. I went into work a little early the next morning and got my check. My close friend was there, and she and I talked for a little bit about her boyfriend and gossip that she had and whatever. Then she says, "Dude, there was the creepiest little kid standing outside the front door when I came in this morning. We come in and leave from the back door." "Really?" "Yeah, he was just standing there, staring out the window. But when I went to open the door, he ran off." "What did he look like?" I ask, trying to keep from freaking out. "Boy, gray coat, red hat." Neither I or anyone else has seen or heard about him since. What the hell? Creepy file number 95, written by I've Seen Bigfoot. We found Bigfoot in Alaska. I was 13, camping with my family on the border of Alaska and Canada. I think it was June, just about dusk, and if you know anything about Alaska, you'll know that it was quite late. We'd been listening to what sounded like bear noises, moans, grunts, and caterwauls like you'd hear from baby bears, coming from the woods all evening. This isn't a terribly abnormal thing in Alaska, but still sends a shiver down our backs. My younger sisters and my mother and I were setting up the tent, and all of a sudden a bunch of birds freak out and fly out of the forest about 150 yards away. We all turn that way to look at the sound, and just as we do, something crosses a clearing from where the birds flew. In the clearing, there stood one tree with branches starting higher up, and as a thing, we thought it was a human, walked upright on two legs, arms swinging, etc., crossed. Its head just came up to the lowest branch. We automatically assumed it was my 6'2" brother going into the woods to pee. It was one of those moments you see in a movie. I said, "That must be Blake." And not 2 seconds later, our brother shows up behind us, asking why we look so startled. So then we rationalize it by saying it must have been someone else going into the woods. My brother went over to the clearing to check it out, and as we stood and watched, we realized how huge the thing was. Blake was about half its bulk, and came about 2 feet short of the lowest branch that the thing's head brushed. He came back shaky and clearly startled. My brother, the skeptic, said he heard something very heavy running very fast through the woods. Case file number 1166, written by Novocaine. The moon is an illusion. So I was out leveling our family garden, picking out the weeds and just enjoying the evening, making the garden all nice to plant stuff tomorrow. I go to sit down, drink some water, pick up my phone to shoot a text to a friend, and then decide I'll walk down to my secret garden and fort to check out on my wildflowers and caladium. As I'm walking down the hill, I do my normal routine and look at the sky to see what the clouds are doing today. I look up and see this huge, bright circle and was like, whoa. Mind you, I've seen many a full moons. This was like in your face. Hi, I'm the moon, and you will notice me type bright. Yellowish, white, gleaming pearly moon, and a perfect circle. I've never seen it so beautiful. So then I text my mom something like, "Wow, the moon is bright tonight." I still have the text. I thought nothing of it really, besides the fact there must be a full moon. Cool. Sit in my fort and garden thing for a while, head back up the hill and go inside. When I sat down, I figured I'd check my moon phase app to see how illuminated it was. Sometimes a full moon looks full, but is still at 85 to 99% illumination. I like to keep track of things up there. It's fascinating. Anyways, I look at the app and it says 10% illumination, waning crescent, age 26.47 days. So then I check Google, same thing. So I got up and went back outside to look for the moon, and it was just gone. Nothing. Only the sun setting. Got ballsy enough to just glance at the sun for a split second, just to make sure I couldn't do it like I did with the moon. And now I'm sitting here typing this out because I literally don't know what to do with this. I decided I want to push it to the farthest corners of my brain, under a rug, never to be seen again. But first, I need to know if anyone else has genuinely gone through something like this before. What did I see? 'Cause it sure as hell wasn't the moon then. A dim sun? An illuminated hole? A hallucination? A projection? Case file number 1167, written by ThrowRaw5977. The Twilight Zone of Parenthood. My son is 2.5 months old and has only so many clothes. I wash his clothes every week and I dress him every day, so I know what clothes he has since I see them quite often. A few weeks back, my husband and I picked out some outfits for him from Macy's because we had a gift card. I saw the cutest gray onesie with blue foxes on it and bought it for him for bedtime. Tonight, during our usual bedtime routine, I dressed him in this onesie and laid him down for bed. My husband is playing his game, and I had to run to the bathroom. On the way back to the room, I had some anxiety and wondered if this motherly worry would ever end. When I came back, I saw the exact same outfit on the bed. I can't describe the fear that I felt. It wasn't a scary movie fear, but I felt sick to my stomach and like something was wrong. My husband said he's always had 2 outfits, but I know for a fact he hasn't. I know every article of clothing he has. I've pulled every tag off of his clothes before I put them on. I would have known if he had 2 of these. I feel very sick right now, and I feel like I've changed universes without realizing it, and I don't know when. Case file number 1168, written by Current Tree 770. The Vanishing Act, twice in broad daylight. This has happened to me twice now, within the last couple of years. The first time I was walking to work and on our city's main avenue. I looked to my left and noticed a man standing outside a building, talking on his phone, and he walked around the power or electrical unit that is outside the building. Nothing out of the ordinary. I looked away for a split second, and when I looked back in his direction, he was gone. He never came around the side of the unit. There is an alley that separates two buildings where he was, but I looked, and there was nothing there, no one. I had to cut through the parking lot where he was, and this man was just gone. That was the first time I had seen anything like this, and it still shakes me up. The second time was just a couple of days ago. I was walking to work, new job, different end of town, and going down the sidewalk. Now, my workplace is in a strip mall, and at the far right of the strip mall, closest to the sidewalk I was walking on, is the mailboxes for this building. I was coming down the hill and noticed a woman walking towards the mailboxes, again, not thinking anything of it. Just a lady going to check the mail for one of the businesses, right? I looked away for a fraction of a second, and when I looked in her direction, she was gone. No car had pulled up. There's no door next to the mailboxes, and from where I was, I would have seen her walking around to one of the sides of the strip mall. This woman had completely vanished. I turned to walk towards the building and still no trace of her. No open mailboxes. I have told my husband about these two incidents, and he's equally as baffled as I am. Has anyone else had this happen? We keep joking that it's aliens or time travelers, but it's weird that I've seen it happen twice in broad daylight while on the way to work.
Case notes for file 1157, kitchen evidence of universal instability. So indeed pasta, penne, with spicy fire-roasted tomato marinara sauce is my go-to lazy meal. It's so good. I actually add some impossible ground beef to it, and I add some cayenne pepper as well. I like really spicy food, as you can probably tell. The effort to deliciousness ratio is almost infinity. So good. It's not the most filling meal, but it's incredibly delicious. Now, as per the glitch, I don't think you can frame this any other way than the actual mass in the pan losing cohesion. The molecular bonds holding the atoms together either lost electromagnetic charge, so the molecules of oil could simply flow right through. Remember that most of what we are, what we call mass, is still empty space. How would this loss of cohesion work, though? It's never, to my knowledge, been observed in scientific tests, which leads me to speculate that there's a certain intent involved. Because if not, we would see it in scientific observations. There has to be some block that prevents it, at least when people are directly observing. And it comes back to that so often, doesn't it? If we observe something, it affects it. I mean, literally, you have to observe something, light has to bounce off of it, but it's more than just that. I think there's a play in sentience, because light was bouncing off the pan when it lost cohesion. So there's an element of sentience to this, I think. I wonder if a spirit could affect this, temporarily bringing some of the mass of the kitchen pot into its own phase. So it's out of phase in the real world, or the world of the living. But why would they do that? It's an idea, but honestly, I'm not sure. Case notes of file 1158, the Keychain Anomaly. I agree that, per the description, those look very neat. A cool Secret Santa idea for this year. The only explanation I can offer is one that I often offer here, is that there's a certain lost and found that exists in the multiversal sense. When you start to understand this, reality feels a bit more unstable, true, but also more interesting, I would say. Things can go missing, and they can just reappear randomly. Maybe spirits are involved, but I think usually it's just the universe misplacing things. There's information in the server, and it's trying to computate everything, but sometimes it loses track. Things get jumbled together, misplaced, mismatched, and it also applies across the entire multiverse, not just a single universe, which means the amount of data being processed is unimaginable. Case notes for the Creepy File 94, A Night of Shadows in the Closet. It's clear to me in my readings that certain areas occupy a negative force in the universe. If this is drawn from general malaise of what occurred there before, like someone ending their journey there, or actual spirits, it's not always clear. But I'm not sure it's possible to truly cleanse an area. The only solution is to move away. And thankfully, it's not like this negative energy lingers on people who pass through it. As soon as you clear the area, the cloud of negative energy lifts away. Maybe if you're in that area, that negatively charged area for a long amount of time, maybe then it'll linger and almost like infect your soul, but it takes a long time. People who are affected by this, who just pass on through entire towns that are affected by this, they don't report any lingering, lasting effects. So that's good at least, And now time for the quote of the day. Here's something to think about. How come you never see a headline like, "Psychic wins the lottery"? Jay Leno. Yeah, and actually, there's a pretty simple explanation to this in my mind, in that psychics, it's not so much an ability that's consciously willed, at least in the stories I've read. It's that some people are more, the link between the subconscious and the conscious is more open and flows more freely, so more information from the subconscious passes through. And the subconscious has access to all the information that's floating out there and can decode it and then transmit it to the conscious. Of course, the mechanism for that, it's not a willed effect, it's just whatever the subconscious ends up doing. We're just the host receiver that's connected to the body, but we don't really decide what the subconscious does. That's its own beast. So anyways, people who have this link that's more connected between the two regions, they have access to more information. But when that occurs, and what information it is random. It's not really in their control. They're people that, I guess, are blessed and cursed with more knowledge, but it's random knowledge. They don't control when they receive it. Besides, also, even if you could control it, you wouldn't go around advertising that I'm a psychic, I can win the lot. The government would pull up and, have you tested and committed, or probably just test you. So keep that quiet if there are psychics out there that can control their ability. Case notes for file 1159, the Cryptic Night in Iraq. Wow, so Florida man strikes again, all the way over in Iraq. Impressive. How truly bizarre this is, though. He had Florida tags. How does that happen? Was it a car that was actually from Florida and an actual American just there? Did they just import the tags over the license plate for some reason? Outside of importing the car from the States, like on a boat? Who would do that, though? What's the point? I suppose it's not impossible, though, but just very odd. Maybe we're dealing with a space-time anomaly that transported him far away? Hell, from his perspective, he might not even realize that he's in Iraq. Maybe he still thinks that he's in the US, in Florida, and that there's just some military checkpoint that's going on. I mean, it was US military, so, it wasn't like he was pulling up to a checkpoint with Iraq military. If you're in Florida and you pull up to a checkpoint and it's Iraq military, you'd be like, what's going on? Are we being invaded now? From his perspective, he may not actually realize that anything too weird has happened. It would explain the checkpoint confusion and how he's driving a minivan from Florida. That's all I got, though. Outside of a space-time anomaly, I don't know. It's very strange. I hope he managed to get home safely, though. Case notes for file 1160. The very strange taco night. Ah, yes. The ever-alert dog, Mr. Ben, routinely barks at nothing at all during the day, waking me from my peaceful slumber. It's very frustrating, but Mr. Ben just wants to be safe. I like how you stated it so simply, though. And indeed, it's what I think actually happened to the pan. For a bit of time, it blinked out of existence. Rather, how I frame it, everything that isn't in the cone of a sentient player blinks out of existence until a sentient player moves back in to look at it. Then it blinks back in. Rarely, objects that are supposed to form back fail to. For a while. Usually they return, but not always. And even better, sometimes you get an extra duplicate from a neighboring multiverse universe. So that's cool. In this case, you just got your pan back. Unsettling, I think is the word, It's the only thing that's happened to me that's weird, besides, a weird episode of Stargate appearing from nowhere. Never saw it before, and then tennis balls vanish. Nothing too crazy. No alien abductions or space-time anomalies into deep space or something. Well, then I would die, so hopefully that doesn't happen. If a space-time anomaly happens, I hope it's concentrated and transports me somewhere else on Earth. Please, not inside the Earth. Case notes for file 1161. The Sixth Sense. To feel his pain, to be so connected. Well, one layer of that is empathy, not just sympathy, caring for your father, but truly your mind, and in this case, your soul was tethered to your father, in ways we currently cannot describe with the scientific method, but as real as electromagnetism or gravity or any other force, or rather in this case, a manifestation of forces. It's all part of the natural world and happens to people all the time, if you're open to it. If you haven't shut off that access ramp to your subconscious, between your subconscious. I think many people have, without necessarily realizing that they did. Anyways, I'm glad your father is fit as a fiddle. I hope he remains that way for a long time. And now time for the quote of the day. Health food makes me sick. Calvin Trillin. Yes, it's difficult to find health food that is particularly delicious. For me, there is one that's just incredibly delicious, and that's avocado sushi. You make the rice in the rice cooker, mix it with rice vinegar, and then you just assemble it on a nori wrap, add some avocado between it. Then you roll it up and slice it up, and you want to mix a bit of Kiko soy sauce with sushi sauce. I can't say it. With sushi. With sushi sauce. There you go. My God. Anyways, you mix that together, and the sushi sauce is a bit sweeter, so it really blends well with the soy sauce, which is saltier. I think on their own, soy sauce is too salty and sushi sauce is too sweet. So you mix them together and it's perfect. Just dip that in. You can use a fork. You don't have to use chopsticks, but more appropriate to use chopsticks, I guess. Anyways, make it. It's so good. Case notes are file 1162. I was saved by my granddad from the brink of death. So a few stories ago, there was an account of a woman being saved in what she described as a great black void of nothingness, with a speck of light in the distance. An older man she didn't know, who had recently passed, was there, told her to go into the light. I wonder what effect the light signifies. In one sense, we can think of it like voluntarily restarting the game. I think it's a choice to be saved. Even quantum immortality, when it applies, I think is a choice. Like if you die in a video game, you can just choose to restart or exit, maybe return to the real world. And yes, guardian angels exist. Perhaps the fragments of loved ones or family members still lingering around, maybe they chose the option to linger around, and it does have deleterious effects. And maybe they don't know that. You know, these choices we make aren't always made with complete information. That's the other aspect to it. And you know, how you framed it in your dazed state reminds me of Castiel pulling Dean from the depths of hell, raised from perdition, plucked from the deep hole. Yeah, I don't think you were in hell. Maybe a type of oblivion that you can choose to exit. But it's always easier with help. Case notes are file 1163. When ghostly guests join you in bed. Isn't it wonderful how peaceful our minds get when sleeping? Or in that gently awakened state? Without knowledge otherwise, we assume the best. Anything to justify going back to sleep. There could be banging on the door, lightning strikes, tornadoes, hurricanes, dogs barking, whatever it is. I just want to sleep. Let me go back to bed. I hate having to sleep, but I love sleeping. Is anyone else like that? It's very weird. One thing I take away from stories involving ghostly pets, well, it's further evidence that they have souls. At least some of them. Perhaps some people, some animals, some things we qualify as living with sentience aren't just placeholders from the simulation, but definitely some of them are real, connected with a real soul of sentience. And it is curious to ponder, though, how deep down it goes. Do viruses have souls? Well, no. What about trees? No. What about insects? Then it starts to make you think. To what extent does it reach? I don't know for sure, but I'm starting to get weary going beyond insects. Case notes for the bonus file. Whispers from the Beyond. A tearjerker for sure. You know how they say that before death, our life flashes before our eyes? My hypothesis is that not only is it our lives that flash before us, but the lives of others we love too, including their buffered future. That flood of information stored in the subconscious, those barriers drop, and it all flows in. Erratically for most, as described. Hard to make out exactly what's happening and what it all means. But one thing is clear, you're going to be a great mother. You know the other thing too? Maybe it was sort of a cosmic trade. Maybe your great-grandmother made that trade. She was dying and she could give out what little essence she had left, or maybe that would linger behind as a spirit, and use that to infuse you, so then you would be able to conceive. As an idea, a trade of some sort. Because yeah, energy can't be created or destroyed, it always just changes forms in the universe. Well, maybe it can be created. That is a different topic though, but I don't know, maybe that's not related, maybe it wasn't necessary, but for one thing is certain, she knew what was going to happen and that you would be a great mother. So that's beautiful. And now time for the quote of the day. It's not that I'm afraid to die. I just don't want to be there when it happens. Woody Allen. Yeah, same. I want that cloak of invisibility from Harry Potter. I think that story in Harry Potter of the Deathly Hallows. You have the wand, pure power. You have the resurrection stone, which can bring loved ones back, which is interesting, but even then they can't quite come back as they really are. I guess it can reanimate a body as they were, like a facsimile, but it can't restore the soul. And then of course, my favorite one is the invisibility cloak. And key of that is being able to hide even from death. I love life. I want to live forever. I don't know if that'll be possible. I think the soul is eternal, but I like this plane of existence, at least for a good while. I want to go out and explore the stars and see what's out there, you know? Maybe we'll have biological immortality, who knows? With AI coming into fruition now, there's going to be a lot of interesting developments, I think, within the next 20 to 50 years. I mean, even the next 5 or 10 years. There's no way to predict what's going to happen. If I can live for a good long while, you know, thousands of years at least, I'll take it. No invisibility cloak, but just science. Case notes for file 1164. An entire road just vanished. The only thing I can think to explain this is dual quantum immortality all the way to a new universe that doesn't have a continuous path through that residential neighborhood. But that's a massive divergence from the original universe. It might not be that, and if not, I don't know. It can't be a space-time anomaly because you don't mention being in a different area. You still turned and you were in the area you're supposed to be to go home. So it wasn't just a different road. What else could it be? Maybe a perception glitch of some kind? But what could or would want to cause you some illusion of a road that continues straight forward? It's not like it was trying to kill you and the road forward was like a pit of lava or something. So I don't know what the motive would be for doing that. I know I'd have gone totally mad seeing an entire road just vanish. That would be freaky. At least you had a witness. That always helps. Case notes for file 1165. The boy who conquered physics. So I fully understand what you mean by a Pavlovian response to the sound of a door alert. I had one similar when I was working downtown as a front desk manager for an apartment building in downtown Montreal. When someone comes in, you sit up straight, you perk up, and you put your friendly face on. It's automatic. So I believe you. No way the kid left unless he left through the back door, but I'm guessing it's locked from the inside, or there would be some alert if he did. A fire escape that's broken? Only thing I can think of. I know you, the employees go in and out of there, but it seems like it wouldn't be possible for the kid to do that. And why would he? Why not just go out the front door? Why did he come back, though, alone with no parents in the morning? That's very weird. Doesn't seem like a ghost, though, interacting too easily with the material world. No EM interference causing lights to flicker, etc. Altogether, I don't know. But there are a lot of stories of very materialized kids that appear, well, entities that appear as kids. The kids with the black eyes, there were a few stories of kids just standing in the road and then not being there when the person went back to check. There was something going on with kids. Maybe not kids, but entities posing as kids for some reason. Is it nefarious? Well, I don't know if it's nefarious, if there's malice intended, but it's very creepy. So whoever is doing it, stop. Case notes for the creepy file number 95. We found Bigfoot in Alaska. You know, stories about Bigfoot don't surprise me at all. I think people have a misconception that the entire world is fully explored and we've cataloged all species of animals and creatures out there. Not even close. The world is just too massive. There's unexplored regions abound, not to mention the cave systems. If a low population of bipedal species was out there, who's to say they couldn't be living mostly in caves like we used to hundreds of thousands of years ago? Hunting and foraging the nearby forests and getting water from streams. Nothing at all that crazy, not even close. Especially not relative to the content I usually cover on this channel. Pretty mainstream almost. Funny how Bigfoot by comparison almost feels too normal. You know, this could even help to explain the missing 411 cases. They overlap so much with national forests and cave networks. It's not just hobbyist spelunkers going missing. So be careful out there, folks. Who knows what's there? And now time for the movie of the day, Shutter Island. So Shutter Island is a 2010 movie, described as an American neo-noir psychological thriller. It's directed by Martin Scorsese, Not exactly an underrated director, is he? And is based on a novel, so you know the storyline is going to be refined and detailed, and it is. It's one of Leonardo DiCaprio's best roles, in my opinion. And what I love about this movie more than anything else is the tone it's able to set. It's an ongoing mystery, starting off as a whodunit, but progressing into a multi-layered question about reality and sanity. On a second watch, I noticed all of the hints. All I can say is, if you like thrillers, watch this and pay attention. You absolutely can figure out the ending before you get there. Maybe even from the first 10 minutes, yeah. The movie respects your intelligence, so keep that in mind, but definitely watch it. Case notes for file 1166. The moon is an illusion. People legitimately witness the strangest anomalies in regards to the moon, and what fascinates me is the meta aspect of it. Almost every story I read about the moon glitching out are different from each other, so what could that mean? Everything about the moon disappearing, to moving across the sky very fast, or to seeing ripples across the surface. Indeed, like a distorted projection. Or in this case, it just appears super bright for no reason. And sort of like at dusk when there's still some light out in the sun. It honestly baffles me. I really do think the moon exists. I don't think it's an illusion. And is a standard celestial body. Tides and all that. How do they work? But I can't deny something strange is going on there. Maybe the moon does exist, but for some unknown reason, the government is projecting an image of it that isn't truly what it is. That doesn't really fit with me, though, because of the brightness of it and how it appears. If it was a projection, I don't think it would work this way. You'd be able to easily determine where the projection was coming from. People would already have done that. And it wouldn't really make sense because everyone is observing it more or less the same way, usually, from any given location. Altogether, this is one of the more mysterious glitches that I narrate because I don't know. I really don't know until I go there myself, with Elon Musk's help in the 5 years. Maybe then I'll record a few glitches from the moon base. Yeah. Reminds me of Pluto Nash. As a terrible movie, but I still love it. Maybe just nostalgia, I don't know. Case notes for file 1167. The Twilight Zone of Parenthood. Right, so a universal switcheroo is possible. Hinting at this because your husband has always believed that you had two of those onesies. Or it's not a switcheroo, it's just a universal duplication. But it's also possible it's merely a duplicate in the sense that a different universe lost it. So in that universe, the onesie, you never put it on your kid. Before you even put it on, it disappeared. And your husband doesn't know anything about glitches, so his mind wouldn't even go towards that end of the spectrum of explanations. So yeah, if there was a second one, in his mind would just think it would create the explanation that you've always had too. He wouldn't even entertain the idea that it just magically appeared. I mean, there'd be no basis for thinking that way. It would be rather odd, though, if you experience quantum immortality, given you don't describe any sort of health condition. People do randomly just die, sometimes, from brain aneurysms, but it's exceptionally rare, especially, I don't think you're much older than middle age, 30s, 40s. So yeah, just randomly dying. I can't rule it out, but it doesn't seem likely. But it is one explanation. You're just in a different universe where you just bought two of the same onesie, which isn't that crazy. I mean, the idea of buying two if you liked it. Yeah, I could see that. So, okay, we'll keep that to the side as a explanation. But a duplication is probably much more palatable and likely. Sadly, though, we may never know exactly what happened, because there's no way to test it as far as we know. Maybe there is a different energy state as you transition between universes in the multiverse. When your soul connects to a new host body, it may have some detectable effect on the body, the matter in the body. It would make sense if it did, right? The soul is pure energy, so connecting to a new host would leave some trace. Maybe just not something we can detect yet, or even know to look for. It's like if you have a unknown substance in your blood, unless you know what that substance is, it's hard. There's so many things in the blood that it's hard to even look for. So it could be something like that. Maybe it does leave a trace, but we don't even know what to look for. But anyways, it sounds like you have a good life. You have a husband and kids. It's great. And now you have two onesies, so what more could you ask for? Case notes for file 1168. The Vanishing Act in Broad Daylight. I don't think this is a ghost or a time traveler or even aliens, as much as I wish it was the latter. I think some areas are quite simply prone to space-time anomalies. And the curious thing is, the man on his phone and the mail lady most likely took a step in front of themselves and before realizing anything had happened, maybe even miles away from where their foot should have landed. What would be really cool is if one day, I can find stories that appear to be linked. For instance, from their perspective, like if the mail lady also wrote a glitch where she was approaching the mailbox in this building, in the strip mall, and then was just like on the other side of the building, one moment to the next. And if you have those stories that link together, I mean, that would be very interesting to read, at least for me. So far, I haven't found stories that perfectly link in that way, at least unless they were like friends or roommates or family members that happened to both of them at the same time, but not like strangers that linked up. You need two people that either watch my channel or on Reddit and have the... That's the other thing to think about this is I think there's a lot of glitches happening, but most people either don't appreciate it, like in the previous story, their mind doesn't even go to the possibility of a glitch, so they're not going to go hunting for a channel that talks about them, or go on Reddit or other forums to post it. So we would never know. But I think glitches are happening all the time. It's just, they're underreported because people don't accept them as glitches, or they just don't even know that there's a place to talk about it without being, labeled as crazy. So yeah, there's definitely an underreporting problem in this environment. But as time moves on, I think less and less. And now time for the quote of the day. Some national parks have long waiting lists for camping reservations. When you have to wait a year to sleep next to a tree, something is wrong. George Carlin. Ah yes, so national parks are beautiful and they are well maintained, but they're not really meant to just go like brave the outdoors and venture out into the wilderness. They're too controlled for that. And you can argue for good reason or not, but my point is it's more like just, it's not really to go and camp, in my opinion. It's more to go and, you can drive through most of them just to experience the vistas and then move on. If you want to go camping, fishing, whatever it is, and just experience nature, but in a more relaxed way without like a trillion rules, go to a forest instead, a national forest, state forest. Those are much more lax. You can just go there, camp. You can camp in the same spot for 2 weeks, I think. And then you just have to move 25 miles away from that spot and you can just keep camping. So they're effectively, free public land. Just practice leave no trace. So don't just leave garbage laying around. Don't be inconsiderate that way. Be considerate of animals in the area, and that's the best way to experience nature. Forests, not parks. Like the video, subscribe, hit the bell. Kinetic Symphony signing off.